Alright, this is the WorkProX 20-volt cordless pole saw. Alright, so in the box we have the main handle with the battery connection point. Goes down to the end there. And here there is two connections, which is the power for the motor. And so the motor's up here near the saw end. It has a connection system here that you screw and lock in. And then this is the motor. You will have to provide your own chain oil for the little mini chainsaw. It has a little 8-inch bar here that'll cut through branches up to 8 inches in size. And anything bigger than that you're probably not going to be wanting to use a little mini pole saw like this for anyways. So the battery, if you have a WorkPRO battery charger, you can charge it with that. Otherwise, you can charge it with this in-out port. They have a USB-C power delivery port. It also has a USB-A port that can provide power out. Alright, so from the factory, this battery is reporting 80% charged. That flashing there is an artifact of the camera. It's solid in the human eye. So if I push this, it turns on this green light around that USB-C port, which I believe means both those ports are now energized. And you push it again, it turns off. So according to the specifications here, the USB ports on this battery are relatively capable. It says here that the USB-C port can do maximum 45 watts. It'll do 20 volts at 2.25 amps, and that's in or out. So it looks like you can charge this guy at a 45 watt rate just through that USB-C power delivery port. And you could use it to power up cell phones, laptops, anything else at those same high rates. Now the USB-A port here does support quick charging, and so it'll go up to 12 volts or 9 volts if your device supports that. Maximum 27 watts on the USB-A port. Alright, so this is already probably about 5 feet long, and it has a telescoping mechanism, so you undo this clamp and then pull this out. It's spring-loaded, so it'll pop back in, and so you have to really pull on it to get it all the way out. And so you pull all the way out, pop it in there. Alright, so when you put this together, you'll notice there's a little rounded notch here and a little notch there. And on this guy, there's a little rounded bit right there. And there's also kind of an arrow here. So those rounded bits line up and go down and attach. And when this green thing is right at that plastic thing, that's all the way in. Then you just slide this guy up and screw it on. Unless you need to take the head off for storage to make it shorter or something, there's no real reason to take this apart once you have it assembled. So fully extended, the tip of the saw back to the back of the handle here is 111 inches or 9 feet 3 inches. So you can pull this guy here and this thing will retract back. For whatever reason it doesn't want to go all the way back in. There we go. And you can shorten it down to this length when you're storing it. Alright, so storage length here is going to be about 79 or 80 inches, so less than 7 feet, but definitely more than 6 feet. And if you push this little green button here, you can adjust this to about a 45-degree angle on the pole. Helps you get to the top of branches sometimes. And it just latches in place. So most of the weight of the unit is in this end piece with the motor and the saw and the battery. The long handle here, the extension handle, with the strap and everything, it's all aluminum and plastic. So this thing weighs like 1.9 pounds. So the battery weighs 1 pound 5 ounces, so that just about doubles the weight of the pole and handle when you add the battery. And the pole saw end weighs 4 pounds. Alright, so the battery inserts pretty much like every other battery you've ever seen. Snaps in, there's a little orange catch, you push that down and it will unlatch. This little blade guard is, perfectly functional, although it's, kind of thin plastic. Now from the factory, the chain feels a little tight to me, and so we have this knob down here that lets us adjust it. And they have little helpful lock and unlock arrows on it. And so That will loosen your bar. And so now it's too loose, and I'm going to pull it forward a bit to get it kind of where I want it, and then lock that down there. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that amount of chain tension. Alright, we put chain oil into this guy here. Manual says it holds 100 milliliters. They suggest we use bio oil. If we don't have bio oil, we should use something that contains low adhesive additive content. And there's a window to tell you how much is in here. I think the window works when it's held vertically, whereas you kind of do it on the side here to pour oil in there. So 100 milliliters is supposed to last for 15 minutes of operation of the chain. Alright, I filled this up with a very light, colorless oil. We'll see how well that shows up in the oil fill window here once I turn it vertically. I can tell, but only when I go back and forth like that to see the oil level, but it's definitely above the minimum oil level. Alright, I think we're ready to try it out. Chain speed isn't the fastest I've ever seen, but it should get the job done. Alright, so it cut through little, 1-inch branches real easily. The cuts are a little bit bouncy just because it's way at the end of the pole. Once it gets going there, you can see it gets a little straighter. My technique improved over time. This one here made a really nice cut. There's another reasonable cut. Here's the bouncy one. Alright, so next up I have some low-hanging branches from this oak tree, which are probably going to require a ladder and the pole saw. Well, I guess it looked taller than it was because this pole saw is going to let me reach at least that bottom branch. So they say don't push this thing more than 60 degrees over vertical, and that's mostly so the limb doesn't fall on your head, I think. I think I was closer to 75 or 80 there. But you can see oak limb, and once I got it connecting and sawing through nicely, it did a really nice job there just straight through. So it has a decent amount of power to go through bigger limbs. Now the directions explicitly say do not cut things that are on the ground with this. That little bit's not on the ground, so I'm going to cut that. But technically you're supposed to have a chainsaw, a real handheld chainsaw, to deal with the stuff on the ground. Alright, it was pretty simple to cut that limb into pieces that are small enough they'll be picked up by the yard waste truck. Alright, so that's a 6-foot ladder. I'm going to take about that much off the branch. But to do it, I may need to get some more of the branch from up higher up, because I don't want to just leave a branch hanging with nothing on the end of it. So we're going to take this in steps. Cut went really well until it got to this last little bit when it started hanging, and I had to move the saw kind of to the bottom side to sever the last little bit that was holding it up. Now I'm actually pretty happy with stopping there, except for this branch here, so I'm going to try to chop that off there. So again, the pole saw is not meant for cutting things on the ground. I'm being very careful here to stack things up in the air so the pole saw never hits the ground itself. I've also pulled the extension all the way in to give me as much control as possible. Now, I never felt the need to use this shoulder strap. It's not balanced to carry it. It's more just to keep it from falling off you if you drop it. You know, so the balance point is like here if it's not extended, and then if you extend it all the way out, the balance point shifts to way up here. So you really can't carry it with that shoulder strap super effectively. I think it's mostly as a safety thing to keep it from dropping. You know, if you're up on a ladder or something, this thing will allow you to carry it without hands, and then you can pick it up and carry it. Safety catch here, so this guy won't easily flip without pushing this in from either side, so it works with left hands or right hands. You basically push that in and then pull, and it activates the chaw. If you're chopping down things like this, at some point you're probably going to want a pair of clippers as well for just the small stuff. Alright, so this guy did a good job going through several limbs. Everything held together well. It is plastic construction, but I haven't had any problems with any of it cracking or breaking or anything like that. So I would say this feels like kind of, you know, it's consumer grade. This isn't something that an arborist is going to be using every day on their truck. But this is the type of thing at the price point where if you need to chop a couple of limbs off that are overhead, you don't want to hire an arborist to do it. You buy this, it'll work for a couple of jobs. Keep it in your garage, you know, another tree grows something out, you can chop it out. So, you know, occasional household use does a really good job. Now, it still has oil in it. And a lot of chainsaws will leak chain oil, so I'm going to put it on a paper towel and we'll check and see after a while if any oil is leaking out. Also, I feel a lot of people are going to hang this vertically in their garage, and so if you do that, we'll hang it vertically and see if any oil leaks out in that case. You can always unscrew this and empty a lot of the oil out, and that's probably what I'll do eventually for long-term storage. Now, it's also possible to separate this guy off, so you can unscrew this guy here and just pull that off. So you can keep this somewhere where you don't mind if oil leaks, away from the rest of the pole. I'm just going to leave it like this for a day, and this is kind of like if you were laying it down flat, and we'll see if anything stains those paper towels. Well, I didn't need to wait a day. It looks like, you know, there's a little tiny oil spot there. Coming out just from the bottom down here. So, you know, it will definitely leak some chain oil. I flip the paper towels over and I'm putting it this way as if it were hanging vertically. I have one little tiny drip there which I think is from something previous. So we'll wait if anything else pops out. Alright, so I've left this guy propped upright as if it were like hanging from a wall mount. And there is definitely a kind of stain of the oil right around there, you know, so it does leak some oil. But then pretty much every chainsaw I've ever used leaks oil. So if you want to make sure that doesn't leak, you're probably going to have to empty the oil out of it before you store it, or just put it over something to absorb that oil, or someplace you don't mind the oil dropping on the floor. Alright, shipped from the factory, this guy came in reading 80%. And now it reads 69%, and that flashing is just an artifact of the camera shutter. It is a solid 69% in my human eye. So essentially, you know, it took about 11% of the power to do that work you saw me do in the video. So it has, I'd say, plenty of power for, you know, around the house type of jobs. Right, the tool works great. Now I'm going to evaluate the battery. First, I'm going to discharge it via this USB-A port. So I'm basically just discharging it all the way down, and then we'll charge it back up and see how much power it takes to refill. Alright, the USB port turned off. When I push the battery checking function, it says it's at 3%. So basically the battery got super low. We have drained the battery. I pushed the button, it turned back on. I'm going to drain it down a little bit more, but we're basically almost completely empty here. So I'm expecting this guy to shut down. Alright, we've run the battery all the way down to 0%. And this flashing 0, it is actually flashing in real life. So that's not a shutter effect of the camera. That's kind of a warning of, hey, we're down at 0. Alright, I've plugged this into a USB-C power delivery cable. It's negotiated at 20 volt level. It's charging at 2.1 amps, so it's getting basically a 40 watt charging rate. It's actually a little bit higher than that. It's 42.6 watts. I've reset the watt hour meter. We'll see how many watt hours it takes to fully charge the battery. Alright, we are 25 watt hours in. It is still charging at the 2 amp, 43 watt rate. This battery, 20 volt max, nominal 18 volts at 4 amp hours, should have about a 72 watt hour capacity to meet those specifications. Alright, this guy is down to like 0.1 amp draw. It's drawing about 2 watts. So if we're not fully charged, we're very close to it. It's showing me 100% here. I'm going to let it sit for another 20 minutes or so just to see if it will actually shut off on its own or if it just kind of trickles like this forever. Alright, it's drawing 0.03 amps, less than a watt. It's taken 69 watt hours to charge it up here, and the battery display on the front says it's at 100%. The upper bound on the capacity of the battery is 69 watt hours. Alright, the battery's at 100%. We are discharging it 5 volts, 3 amps, basically 14.8, 15 watts. I've reset the watt hour counter, and we will see how many watt hours this guy can deliver out its USB port. Alright, this guy's turned off, and we are down at 0% charged. Alright, so this battery, nominal voltage 18 times 4 amps is 72 watt hours capacity. Out of the USB-A port provided 60 watt hours before it shut things down. So that seems pretty reasonable. There's some efficiency losses through the circuitry that converts down to 5 volts. So it seems like it's probably pretty close to a 70 watt hour battery. I am going to reset the watt hour meter. We're going to charge the battery back up. We'll see how many watt hours it takes to charge it. So this guy's been charging for about 45 minutes. It's got 33 watt hours in it so far. Hasn't done any thermal throttling. It's still at the 20 volt level, 2 amps, so it's doing 42.8 watts continuously and still charging. So the battery display here says it's at 69% charged. Alright, the last time I charged this guy up, it took 69 watt hours to charge it up. It delivered 60 watt hours out the USB-A port. Charging it up here, it's gotten to 100%. It's still doing a tiny little trickle, but it's taken 76 watt hours to charge it back up. So if it delivers 60, takes somewhere between 70 and 76, kind of halfway between those points, 65 to 70 watt hours is my capacity estimate for this battery. And nominally it should be a 72 watt hour battery, so it's just slightly under their kind of specifications for it, which is somewhat reasonable, I think. So the battery basically meets its specifications. It certainly drives the tool for quite a while. I only went down like 11% when I was doing 3 or 4 big limbs out there. So I've been pretty happy with the battery on the tool.